let me bring in my guests. I am eager to have this conversation. We are joined, let me get this right. There we are. We're joined with Ken McCarthy. Ken, welcome to the show, man. How you doing? You doing okay today?
It's good. It's a good day so far. Thank you for asking. How about you?
I am doing good. You have had a hell of a bio. I was going through your bio and I was like, okay, maybe this is the wrong person. And then I realized, oh no, he's just done all of these things in addition to writing these books. So just to give the audience, Ken McCarthy, he's an American activist, educator, entrepreneur, internet commercialization pioneer, author of the book JFK and RFK's Secret Battle Against Zion Extremism, the documentary Evidence. I'm fascinated by this book. I heard your interview with Savvy Sabs, and she was nice enough to give me the information in order to make contact with you. How are you doing this morning? I think I've already asked you that. I would ask you again just as a.
It's good. I'm still good. I'm still good.
All right.
You take it for granted, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I want to show you a clip by Richard Nixon, and I want to get your take on it.
Okay.
And I'm showing you a clip for Nixon because these Nixon and Kennedy battled in an election.
Right.
And I want to kind of give context to the way American presidents dealt with Zionism back then at the time, as opposed to the way you deal with it now. And there seems to be a radical difference. I want to get your take on whether or not you think there's a radical difference or whether I'm just misperceiving this. This is Nixon talking about it. I've shown this to the audience before you got here. I'm going to show it one more time just for you as a basis of reference.
It isn't a question of whether I felt it. The fact is that American Jews support Israel. And I understood that. And the fact is that every Jewish prime minister that I have known has enlisted in the political process on American presidents. That's understandable. I don't object to it. Now, a president must not go along with it on occasion, because let me explain something about what is called the Jewish lobby in this country. In the first place, Jews, understandably in the United States, because of what happened in World War II, because of the Holocaust, are going to put first priority on the survival of Israel. Now, as good Americans as they are, they believe that America's survival and security is directly related to Israel's. In other words, their belief is that being for Israel first means that does not mean you're putting America second, because they think it goes together. An American president, however, has to approach it in a different way, in my opinion. He's got always to think first of what is best for America. And that's true whether it has to do with the Israelis or whether it has to do with the Irish or the Germans or what have you, or the Poles, etc. Usually what is best for America is also best for Israel and vice versa. But on occasions, for example, an American president must make a decision that does not, in effect, give the Israelis a blank check. And
do you think that's true today? Meaning
Absolutely.
what Nixon is saying here.
Yeah, I mean,
no. What I mean is, do you think American presidents?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's Israel first for all these presidents lately. It's interesting to see Richard Nixon, who a lot of people speak ill of, being such an intelligent, well-balanced guy. But the point is really clear. We're Americans. It's America first. If you're putting another country first, maybe you need to move to that country. I mean, in all fairness. So, yeah, no, it's been a long time since we had presidents that were independent.
Yeah, that is clear, concise. He's articulate. He makes the point of, hey, we're Americans. We got to go to America first. The JFK files the book is documentary evidence of JFK and RFK effectively putting America first. Meaning, is that just a point of view that American presidents had back then, that they've evolved into whatever the hell they are today? Like, is that a common point of view of Americans back in the 60s?
Well, so Israel didn't even exist until 1948. So there wasn't much opportunity for other presidents, obviously. However, it was illegal to send arms to the Zionists during the British Mandate. It was a crime. So that was U.S. law pre-1948. Roosevelt, passed away. Truman had to be pushed into accepting Israel. It wasn't automatic. And then we had Eisenhower, and I'm not sure. Well, Eisenhower was kind of tough. the Israelis attacked Egypt when Egypt took back the canal.
Listen now.
Yeah, and he didn't go along with it. He was not. They wanted. It's a long story, but basically, the French and English put a canal through Egypt and said, "Hey, we own this." And one of the leaders of Egypt said in the 50s, said, "You know what? Maybe this is our country," and he nationalized it. Now it's interesting. Who attacked Egypt militarily first? It was Israel. So Israel was acting like the attack dog, as it often does, right? And then what they did was, this is important history. Then what they did was England and France said, "Oh, we need to go in there to separate the two factions so they don't kill each other," right? So Israel kind of opened the door. So, but even then, Eisenhower said, "I'm not getting involved in this." All right, and then we had John F. Kennedy, and people that read my book will see that Kennedy was not against Israel. He was respectful, as he was to all countries, but he was very interested in the independence and the prosperity of the entire world, including the Arab-speaking world. And he saw no reason to give Israel some kind of special treatment. His problem with Israel was they were developing a nuclear weapons program. And his other problem was they were evading the foreign lobbying laws. And the laws are very simple. And Nixon kind of referred to it. He said, look, if you're, outer Slavonia and you want to lobby in the United States, okay, we get it. We get it. And outer Slavonians / Americans may want to go along with it. Okay, we get it. No problem. But you got to register. If you're a foreign lobbyist, you can't just be roaming around the United States giving out bags of money to random people. We need to know who you are, where your money is coming from, and who you're paying. And the Israelis did not want to go along with that. Right. And John F. Kennedy put Robert F. Kennedy on that job. Hey, could I talk about something related to this that's on my mind? So, we've got this whole, I just watched this program yesterday, and we've got this whole world of assassination scholars. And it's a whole world. It's like a little universe, and they write books and they have conferences and they appear on podcasts. And I got to tell you, none of them are talking about this aspect of John F. Kennedy. None of them. And it's really, really strange to me. And one of the things I get into the book is that, they always say the CIA and the mob, they got together and they planned to kill Kennedy. They never mention that the most powerful person in the CIA at the time the Kennedys were killed was a guy named James Jesus Angleton. His mom was Mexican. It's Jesus, but in America, they call it right. That's why he's got that unusual name. But there's a lot of guys in the Latin American world who are named Jesus. So the most powerful man, and his name is hardly ever mentioned. He was head of counterintelligence for 20 years. He outlasted 5 different CIA heads. Okay, and he was an ardent Zionist. So much so that there are 2 memorials built to him in Israel. Okay, that was the leading man in the CIA at the time of those killings. Who was the leading man in organized crime at the time of those killings? They often talking about the Italians. I'm half Italian, right? So they're always talking about Carlos Marcello and Trafficante, and they're always throwing these Italian names around. The leader of organized crime was a guy named Meyer Lansky. Okay. And he is the man who literally put the organized in organized crime. He got together with all the guys and said, look, we're all shooting each other, killing each other, cutting in each other's territory. It doesn't make sense. Let's divide everything up and run it rationally. That was Meyer Lansky. He was also the banker. They call him the accountant to the mob. They call him the banker to the mob. What he really was the fence and the ultimate money launderer. So all these other guys are running around robbing, stealing, killing, dealing drugs. Well, that money had to be laundered. He was the man that laundered it. So he was also the man that did the deal with the CIA way back in the 40s during World War II. So he knew the CIA inside and out. He was an ardent Zionist. He was shipping weapons to Israel when it was illegal to do. He was committing a crime. So everyone's happy to say the CIA was involved. No one has a problem with that anymore. Everybody's happy to say that organized crime was involved. No problem there. Nobody wants to point out the historical fact. And by the way, I'm talking facts here. We don't need secret files. We don't need a 20-year investigation. We know who the top man in the CIA was. at that time, James Jesus Angleton. He was also obviously involved in the cover-up, which I talk about in the book. So much so that when the head of the Mexico City the station chief in Mexico City, the retired one, died, he personally got on a plane and flew all the way to Mexico City to badger his wife to be able to clean out his library, his safe, and every piece of paper he had in his house. Wow. That, by the way, Mexico City and the assassination are very connected. That's how into the cover-up he was personally. Okay, so we know he was involved in the cover-up. He also, and a lot of people don't know this, but it's fact now. CIA was reading Lee Harvey Oswald's mail before the assassination, and it was Angleton who was assigning that job, because that was his job, counterintelligence. Mm-hmm. Now, a little fact came out. It's in the files. It came out about 4 or 5 years ago. They finally revealed the name of the guy that was reading those letters. Now, the first question, why did they need to keep that secret for over 50 years? Right. Because he was an Israeli intelligence officer who was affiliated with the CIA. He was a guy posing as an international, trade lawyer. He was based in Tel Aviv, and and that gave him the ability to fly back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between Israel. It's a cover, right? A cover. He was also the man that James Jesus Angleton tasked with going to the hearings, the Warren hearings, specifically when the wife of the assassin, I forget her name, but when she was being interrogated, Angleton sent that man to sit in the room and listen to what was going on. So anyway, Angleton deep into it. There's no question about it. But what the other guy, again, the mob guy, Zionist to the bone.
Yeah.
Right. And if you go, you can read all these conspiracy books. You can go to all these conferences. You can listen to a million podcasts. They will never, ever mention this fact. I also have to point out, if I may.
No, please.
We had a movie, JFK, by Oliver Stone. I think Oliver Stone is one of the great American heroes of all time, but not for the JFK movie. He's a hero because he made a movie called Born on the 4th of July, and every American should see it. It's the most powerful anti-war movie ever made. So he accumulated a lot of capital, a lot of political connections in Hollywood over many years to spend it to make that movie, because it's anti-war. It tells you how horrible war is, and it also shows you how our country treats our veterans. If people haven't seen this movie, and you know what? No one talks about this movie anymore. Watch this movie. It'll blow your mind. So anyway, I love Oliver Stone for that reason. However, he's wandering in the weeds when it comes to JFK. And I just saw him on an interview yesterday, and I love him. I don't want to criticize him. But here's a fact of life. The guy that financed JFK, an Israeli and a Zionist. And he has two particular factors to his life story. Number one, he is one of the reasons that Bibi Netanyahu is in jail. Not in jail. He's not in jail yet. He should be, but in court. And he actually was involved corrupting Bibi Netanyahu. And the prosecution in Israel said, look, if you'll testify against Netanyahu, we won't charge you. So that fellow, and I have his name written down somewhere, but anybody can look it up. Who's the guy that produced and funded JFK? It's very easy to find his name. No. So he's like this with Netanyahu. He was also involved in helping Israel get the technology to build the atom bomb. Oh, okay. He's the guy that paid for the JFK movie. So we're not going to hear anything about Zionists in the JFK movie.
Now, just to be clear, you're making the connection between, because you're making the connection between. Well, yeah, it is, right. And I'm trying to reconcile two things. Because there's often questions of, okay, well, why did an American president get killed? And that's always one of the things that is looming. And people say, well, it's because he was trying to make association with the Russians. Some people say, well, they killed him because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. We got so close to being blown up, and it's Kennedy's fault, even though he was able to get us out of it. In your case, your point is the Israelis, the Zionists, he didn't want them to have a nuke. Yeah. And they were doing everything in their power to prevent him from being able to put presidential power on preventing them from getting that nuclear weapon.
That's right. So the way I look at it is it's been presented as CIA organized crime. Fair enough. But they're missing the third party. And that's the Zionists, who happen to have leading roles in the CIA, and they happen to have leading roles in organized crime. Now, I'm not saying that Israel is the soul or the Zionists, and I distinguish between Israel and Zionists. I hope someday Israel becomes sane again, or if it ever was. I don't know. It's certainly not sane now. But I always say the Zionists, and I never say the Jews, because there's a billion Jews that are against what Israel's doing. So to call this a Jewish issue is nuts. Judaism, 3,500 years old. Zionism, 120 years old. Judaism, a religion that values the sacred. Zionism, a political ideology that's based on homicide and larceny. So they're not connected. They're not connected. So all these guys were talking. You know, the mob was talking with the CIA. The CIA was talking with the Israelis. The Israeli government. They were all interconnected. So they had multiple reasons to kill Kennedy. One was his brother was going after organized crime hard. Mm-hmm. That's a good reason for organized crime to get rid of him. On the Cuban side, and people never say this, and God bless the Cubans. I love Cuban people. I've been to Cuba many times. But a lot of the people that had to leave Cuba when Castro came in were stone cold killer gangsters. That's why they had to leave, because they were working for the mob. People don't realize that the mob ran Cuba under Batista. It was their baby. And who was running it? Lansky. Meyer Lansky. Cuba was his dream. So he was really pissed off when he got thrown out. Okay, so there's another reason. And there were a lot of Cubans running around that wanted to kill Kennedy too. Who else? The oilmen, the Texas oilmen wanted to kill Kennedy because he was going to get rid of the oil depreciation allowance or depletion allowance, which basically gave them, it was like an accounting trick that let them keep way more profits than they should have. And Kennedy was talking about taking it away. And the CIA, of course, hated Kennedy because he actually talked about dissolving the CIA. Something, by the way, his father talked about as well. This was a family thing, right? And then, of course, we have the Zionists. They wanted their atom bomb. Kennedy was absolutely vehemently opposed to it. He even told them, look, if you don't let us into your research facility, like pretty much now, there's a good chance we're going to pull our support for you, right? Wow. And then the second important, and we got to think about Kennedy. He was trying to pull back nuclear weapons all over the world. He pushed through the testing ban. He got Russia to agree to do, and all the other countries to agree to do no more open air testing. They were blowing up bombs all over the place. They were throwing nuclear waste all over the world, and he got them to stop. His next goal was to put a moratorium on new weapons, and his final goal was to start dismantling them. So this nuclear weapon thing was a big deal to him. He was not going to let it go. It was also a big deal to the Zionists. They wanted nuclear weapons, and they have them, by the way. Yeah. They wanted them, and they considered it a issue of their survival. So the mob looked at Kennedy and said, "This is a survival issue for us because he's taking us out." The CIA looked at him and said, "This is a survival issue because he's going to dissolve us." And the Zionists said, "This is a survival issue because he's going to interfere with our nuclear weapons program." And they all knew each other, as I mentioned earlier. The Zionists and the CIA and the mob all knew each other. So very easy for them to get together and pull this off. And that's how. And so that's the third leg. You know, a stool, right? You can't sit down on a stool with two legs. You fall over. You need at least three legs. And those are the three legs. And here's what I want to say. They're keeping the fact out of the public consciousness that the third leg of the stool was the Zionists, not just the Israelis, but Zionist people in the CIA at the highest levels and Zionist people in organized crime at the highest levels. Why are they doing this? I mean, honestly, you're like one of the few people that will let me talk about this. Well, you and Sabby.
I want to know. Yeah. I mean, you wrote the book. You have the documentation in the book. I want to know.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't. I'm going to tell you, a lot of people don't want to know. I put this book in many, many people's hands, and they're happy to have I call it the Punch and Judy. You know, the Punch and Judy show, you have the two puppets fighting each other. So it's like where assassination research is stuck, and here it is 60 plus years later, is here. Oswald did it. Oswald didn't do it. Boom, 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 boom. They get on podcasts and they fight over it for hours. Well, think about this. If I'm going to invade a country and I'm sending a bunch of different guys to pull the triggers, right? Who's the important person there? It's the guy that's giving the orders and the guy that's organizing everything and putting it all together. It doesn't matter who pulled the trigger in Dallas. And clearly, it obviously wasn't Oswald. And get a bolt rifle, guys, and see what you got to open the bolt. You got to pull it back. You got to put the bullet in. You got to close the bolt. You got to shove it in. You got to find the trigger with your pick. You got to that takes a lot of time. You can't do that. Bang, bang, bang. Oswald didn't do it. End of story. We don't need 1,000 more podcasts and books to go into it.
Yeah, I don't believe in the magic bullet thing. I mean, they're expecting us to believe that Oswald, way out, at the repository, was able to get off multiple shots from the bolt action and bring the gun back, aim it, and do it multiple times.
You can't do it.
And it's like, okay, well, how do you know there wasn't another? There had to be another shooter, right? Even the magic bullet thing makes the fact that we call it the magic bullet should kind of give a hint that it's somebody else, right?
See, and you have to understand. So here's the thing. Going back to James G. Singleton, head of counterintelligence. What is counterintelligence? Counterintelligence is to make sure the other guys aren't spying on us, and then also to spy on them. But it's also to create covers for every other operation that's going on at the CIA. And the way they do it is like a hole full of mirrors. If you've ever remember the old carnivals and stuff, and you walk in and there's a mirror, and some things look big, some things look small, and you're all disoriented. That's what the magic bullet is. That's what the endless discussion about Lee Harvey Oswald is. David Ferry, George Morenscheidt, we know who shined the shoes of Jack Ruby the day before he shot Oswald. But nobody will talk about the fact that the guys at the head of the CIA and organized crime were Zionists and had a reason to take Kennedy out for that reason, in addition to all the other reasons they had.
I think the stove is too hot to touch.
It must be.
Yeah.
It must be.
I mean, because they can't make the cognitive leap that Israel works for its own interests, or let's say Zionists have this radical devotion to another country, and from their point of view, well, that's racist or that's anti-Semitic to point out. Yeah. It's like, well, is it true? I mean, I can look at what Israel is doing now. I can see the level of the amount of money that comes in. $100 million were spent in our political campaigns. I think it was like last year. That is an astonishing sum of money, right? And it's like, okay, well, what does that money compel? What are you giving them that much money for? We are obviously giving it for devotion for political capital that you're using. Yeah. So it's not shocking to me. I mean, killing a president is a shocking thing in general, right? It's a mind-blowing thing to happen. It is difficult for some people to make that leap of saying you had a fifth column in your government that did this because they wanted to get nuclear weapons. Or you had these other elements in your government that did this because they hated him for doing something else. Mm-hmm. It's a big ask, I think, for them to kind of take on. And so they recoil the moment that you point that out, even though it could very well be true.
But here's the thing: they're willing to say the CIA did it. Nobody.
Which is another cognitive leap, a fifth column, right?
Yeah, but they won't. But notice they won't ever mention the third player, which were the Zionists.
Yeah,
and I think the reason for that is, being I am absolutely, as you know from my bio, I am not a professional assassination scholar, right? But there are people that are. That's their whole living, and I have a feeling. If you're, and it's, everyone's got to make a living. And I have a feeling if you're in that world and you start talking about what I'm talking about, your books won't be published anymore, and you're not going to any more you're not speaking at any more conferences. So I think that, and so now if you think about how this is structured, when a typical podcaster wants to have an expert, who do they call? Well, they call the assassination community. Yeah. So if you want to control the narrative, just control those guys. And how do you control them? One, you could pay them off, which is possible. But the other thing you could do is just make it really clear. Every time you mention Israel, you're going to be in trouble. So maybe you should just skate that. Don't don't get too close to it. This podcast that I watched yesterday, and I won't mention the name because I respect the person that did it. I'm hoping to educate her. The Stone and his research colleague mentioned James Jesus Singleton. They actually mentioned him, but then they drifted off really fast. You know, and it's like, can't we say? Oh, by the way, another little thing: James Jesus Singleton was head of the Israel desk at the CIA.
Was he?
That is a very weird arrangement because usually you have one job. You're like head of counterintelligence. You're not head of counterintelligence and head of the Israel desk. Now, what is it? So what is the Israel desk? You got to think about it. Central intelligence. That its original job was to collate all the intelligence from around the world. So there are different desks. Here's the Botswana desk. Here's the Chile desk. Here's the Burma desk, or the Thailand desk. Here's the Israel desk. That means all the information coming to the CIA about Israel gets directed to the Israel desk. And the Israel desk is the choke point. They're the ones that distribute that information to the rest of the government. So James Jesus Singleton was head of the Israel desk while simultaneously being head of counterintelligence for 20 years.
Wow.
Think about that.
When they researched this, like when they were doing hearings, just never.
And let me tell you another thing, right? Some people have heard of Frank Church.
Yeah.
Frank Church, that investigation that happened around the 70s, right? Amazing. That's when they actually revealed the connection between the mob and the CIA. It had never really been revealed in a formal setting before. There were always theories about it, right? So that was the first time that came out. So Frank Church, who's he? Senator from Idaho. Great, cool. Did they ask to talk to James Jesus Singleton? No. Did they ask? No. Nobody talks to James. Did they ask to talk to Meyer Lansky? Because they made all the Italian gangsters come in. They didn't ask Meyer Lansky to come in. Now, so what's this with this guy in Idaho? Well, who paid? And he was a great man. He did good things. Who paid for his campaigns? Because he was progressive, he was very popular in, drumroll please, Hollywood. And a lot of his money that made him a senator in Idaho did not come from Idaho. It came from Hollywood. And Hollywood has a lot of Zionists, as we know, and a lot of organized crime Zionists too. Lou Wasserman, the head of MCA, came from the Chicago mob. He was sent out. The mob's they're always good. They're serious business people. Wherever there's money, they're looking around, right? Yeah. And they saw Hollywood booming, and they sent one of their guys out there to do the do. And one of the things he did was enroll a young actor named Ronald Reagan. And if you ever read the book Dark Victory, you will find that the mob had Reagan wired from a very early age. But in any event. So there's a lot of Zionist organized crime, and it's hard to, organized crime and Zionism, they're not separate things. So there's a lot of organized crime money and Zionist money in Hollywood, and that money, I'm guessing, when they say the money came from Hollywood, I'm pretty sure that's who it came from. And when he put on his hearings, he skirted Israel. He didn't want to talk about Israel, and he didn't talk about Israel. And the other thing too is these guys are figureheads, and the people that do the real work are their staff. And they advise the senator, hey, senator, we should go in this direction. We should go in that direction. It's not hard to infiltrate a senator's staff. It happens all the time.
So when Kennedy was murdered, the bomb at that point went there was no eyes on that anymore.
Right.
That was irrelevant.
Right.
In which case Israel got the bomb. The U.S. presidents at that point paid no mind to it. This was a project of Kennedy's, not the priority of the next president. That is amazing.
Well, here's another interesting thing. Lyndon, there are Christian Zionists.
Yeah.
And apparently there are more Christian Zionists than there are people in Israel. I mean, it's a huge group of people. He had family members, including an aunt that he was very close to, who were ardent Christian Zionists. He had a lot of people in his business circle and political circle in Texas who were ardent Zionists. He was very, very close to a couple, and especially the woman, who were terrorists during the British Mandate. Like
Mhm.
these were Zionist terrorists, like shot. I mean, here's the other crazy thing, right? What do you think the Zionists were doing when the British were running Palestine? Well, we all know they bombed the King David Hotel. That's kind of famous. A lot of people have heard about that. But there were scores of terrorist acts carried out by the Zionists, including the murder of policemen, the murder of British troops, the murder of a major British political figure in Cairo, the blowing up of bridges, the blowing up of railroads. Who brought terrorism to the Middle East? There were no terror bombings going on in Egypt or Morocco or Iraq. That whole way of doing warfare, because it's, by the way, Islam is when it's practiced correctly, is a very humanistic, devout religion. Like they don't justify the murder of women and children ever. Like there's no justification for it.
Right.
So that kind of thing did not go on in pre-Zionist Middle East. It was the Zionists that brought terrorism, and the innocent people get killed. A lot of innocent people were killed when that hotel was blown up. By the way, they blew up the hotel because that was the headquarters of the British Mandate. That's where the office was, and there were. And here's the amazing thing: shows you how cold-blooded these people were. There were Jewish employees working for the British Mandate.
Oh, they
They
didn't
were
care.
killed in that bombing too, and I've seen footage from the families that are still alive, remembering they never got an apology. They never got anything. They never got compensation. They lost their father. They lost their husband, murdered by Zionists.
Very similar.
Jews murdered by Zionists.
Well,
And
Hannibal directive.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
they still have policy on some level.
exactly.
Wow. This is fascinating. This is fascinating. I mean, because a lot of this stuff is not, like you said, people will say, well, the CIA killed Kennedy. And they were okay with that. Even if they don't know the details, they said that has been something that has been seeded in the culture where we kind of accept, which is mind-blowing to accept, right?
Yeah.
Like one of your intelligence agencies carried out the assassination of the president. Okay, that's a mind-blowing thing. That's not trivial. And then when you dig into it and you find other linkages that bring it together, what starts to make more sense about, okay, why would the president have been killed? Who would be involved? Oh, that gets fascinating. That's why I wanted you on. And that's what I'm so glad you came on.
You know how they handle it? They call it rogue elements of the CIA, and then it's okay.
Yeah, but in your case, that's not a rogue element of the CIA.
That's my point. He was the top man. He was nothing rogue about him.
Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate you coming on for this.
Thanks for having me on.
Fantastic breakdown.
You're a rare guy. Most people will not let me talk about this stuff.
I could sit here and just let you just talk. I don't even have to say anything. It is fascinating. And like you said, there's so many linkages. Check out his book, Ken McCarthy. He is an American activist, educator, entrepreneur, and a commercialization pioneer, author of JFK and RFK's battle against the Zion extremists. Yeah, Zionist extremism. With documentary evidence, this is the book, just in case people want to see it and get this book. It's on Amazon. You can download it by Kindle. Just amazing. And by the way, RFK Jr. would say the same thing. The CIA killed my dad.
Yeah, but then he doesn't.
But he's a hardcore Zion. Like
he doesn't take it the rest of the way.
No, he doesn't. And at this point, he couldn't take it. Like the stuff that he says, he couldn't take it. But Palestinians are the most pampered people on the planet.
I fell out of my chair when I couldn't even believe that I was hearing those words come out of his mouth.
Yeah, it just shocking for him. He runs a political campaign based on, I want to end wars, I want to talk to my neighbors, I want to talk to my enemies, I want to do all of this stuff. And then, but the Palestinians, screw them. It's like, okay, you're contradicting your campaign, right? Just at the very basis of
and his family's values. He's always talking about his uncle. He's always talking about his father. His uncle in particular. I don't want to go. If I'm going too long, let me know. Okay.
No, go for it.
His uncle, John F. Kennedy, very important story. and I'll be brief. When he was a senator from Massachusetts, twice he got on the floor of the Senate and gave long speeches, one about the French in Indochina, and said, we can't support this anymore. This is not good. He also said, also about the French, he said, look, because it was a horrible war of oppression, very much like what's going on in Palestine. If you can imagine, numerically even worse. The French were just massacring civilians, destroying their villages, starvation programs, concentration camps. I mean, like a concentration camp is when you take people from where they belong, civilians, and you put them into a barbed wire enclosure. That's a concentration camp. So there were concentration camps in Algeria. And Kennedy, again, was on the floor of the Senate saying, this is bad. We're not helping anybody by supporting France doing this. We got to stop it. So when he was president, de Gaulle finally said, okay, we're done. We're going to pull out of Algeria. They'd been there for 150 years. I think they killed literally 1/3 of the population over that time.
Jesus.
I mean, it was horrible what they did. And what did Kennedy do? The Algerians had their first election. They elected a president. And you can find this on the internet. He held the most lavish reception for a foreign president I've ever seen in my life. Maybe you can find a better one. He had an honor guard from every one of the militaries, and not 3 guys with a flag. We're talking like 20 guys deep. He had I don't know, what is it, 21 gun salute.
Yeah.
And it was on the lawn of the White House, the Rose Garden. I've never seen anything so lavish. He was telegraphing to the world. By the way, this happened October 1962. He was dead November 1963. He was telegraphing to the world. And he said this in his speeches. And I have another book called John F. Kennedy, Anti-Imperialist. He said this in his speeches when he was a young man, when there was no profit in it for him. That was the Red Scare time. That was, don't talk bad about our allies. Don't support, insurgents. Just keep quiet. Well, he didn't keep quiet. He spoke out. And it cost him politically. Think about it. He's a senator from Massachusetts. The average guy in Massachusetts, they didn't care about Algeria.
Algeria, right?
They didn't care about Indochina, but he cared, and he paid. He was willing to pay a political price. And then when the Algerians were free, at last, they had their first leader in like 140 years since the French came. He honored that man to a degree. I mean, you just can't honor anybody more in the White House. Usually it's like a chair, 2 chairs. So, the president's here, the other guy's there. They answer a few questions. No, this was this lavish thing.
He was making a point.
Yeah. So he was not into us being this imperial power. He wanted us to compete, but in a fair and honest way, and he wanted us to lift up the other countries. Now, part of it was practical because then we were at odds with the Soviet Union, and he wanted to show that Americans we're decent people. We want everybody to survive, and we want everybody to thrive. But that's not what the people that ran the CIA or the people that run organized crime or people that run Israel had in mind.
Wow, Ken, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate this. You have no idea. This is fantastic. You check out his book. It's right here one time, just for the audience, so they can see it for themselves. JFK and RFK's secret battle against Zion extremism, the documentary evidence. Ken, thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And great to meet you, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Same here, man. Same here. You be safe, okay?